lifetime because when they are already dead, it isn't as if they're going to kill ghosts or dead spirits, right? If you look at it, we don't really see a harm in giving them burial rites because it isn't as if they're going to rise from the dead anyway. Which is exactly why, if their problem is the way that they treat the life of that prisoner, of that war criminal, then we think that the solution then is to give them the commensurate punishment that they deserve during their lifetime in order to compensate for the harms that we conceive are irreversible and simply heartbreaking. But I have two things to respond coming from the past speaker, right? Because he tells us that you simply deny rights when they are abused. But if you look at it, we deny rights that are commensurate and equally opposite to those rights. For example, if you chose to kill someone, then we strip you of the converse right, which is the right to mobility through jail. But if you look at it, burial rights are special, which they already conceded to, because it's a universally recognized process of life. That whatever region you come from, you recognize that death is the end, right? But even if these rights are abused, we concede that war criminals may have abused their autonomy, which is like what I have said, we put them in jail. We question, why must punishment extend to the afterlife? Because when they're dead, it isn't as if they're going to continue harming people who are already living, right? How humane a state is determined by the way that they treat the most inhumane, which is exactly why we give rights to even those who are mentally incapable, or you give prisoners the basic baseline of respect. We think that this is congruent to the way that we treat even the most inhumane, because we recognize that if we want to move on from the past, the only way to do so is to at least give a sense of reconciliation to the people that they have failed. But this is the second thing that he tells us, right? He says that you prevent them from the rising status after death. But if you look at it, he already conceded that burial right is the most humane and personal feature of life. Precisely. If it is so personal, then why must there be exceptions for individuals who, because of some reason, have committed war crimes, right? If you look at it, it's simply a greater reason for us to simply encourage burial rights, because if not, then there are movements and religious-inspired organizations that will be so willing to radicalize against what the state is doing. But we question, why is it that death is something that's seen as being seen as something that is already the same as life? If you look at it, the basic thing that we can give individuals who have caused harm is by giving them at least the basic guideline through which we treat every other individual. We think that because you have committed such harm, then we must treat you just like the way that we want to treat even other people who have caused us harm as well. But before we want closing.
But isn't the one who dictated and said that everyone should deserve rights is humanity, Leisha? Like, this person committed those crimes against the same humanity said everyone deserves these rights, Leisha. We tell you now, you're able to raise that humanity there.
If you look at it, we recognize that in the motion it's spelled as RIPES, right? That means that obviously we do recognize that to some extent these war criminals have abused their rights, but we think that burial rights is something that is universally accepted to be a part of basic lifestyles, which is why no matter what kind of individual you are, we recognize that there are things that the state cannot rationalize, but they respect for the sake of our own reconciliation. The a basic function and a feature of life is because we all have to die. We think that if in their model you simply continue dumping bodies in rivers and random lakes, then what exactly happens to the plight of individuals that they want to continue? What will happen is it's a lot easier to reawaken that same plight because now they recognize that maybe my leader isn't dead yet. If you look at it, it's these very same instances that we're trying to prevent, which is why closure is now the intrinsic part, or the intrinsic idea that we want to uphold. This argument is important because